He found a drunk woman collapsed outside his door at 3 a.m. He was a struggling single father. She was a CEO who never forgot what he did. The doorstep at 3 a.m. the night Marcus Webb finally caught a break started with a knock he almost didn't answer. It was 3:14 in the morning. He knew the exact time because he'd been awake anyway, sitting at the kitchen table with a pile of bills that didn't care how hard he worked, a cold cup of coffee, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator keeping him company. His daughter Lily was asleep down the hall, her nightlight painting a soft orange glow under her door. She was 6 years old and she still slept with her stuffed elephant named Peanut, and as long as Marcus could hear her breathing peacefully, the world hadn't completely fallen apart. He almost let the knock go. Maybe it was kids messing around. Maybe it was the wind. But then it came again, softer this time, almost desperate, and something in his chest pulled him toward the door. He grabbed the small flashlight he kept by the entryway, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door. She was leaning against the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Blonde hair, a silk blouse that probably cost more than Marcus made in a week. One heel on, one heel missing, eyes struggling to focus, and a smell that told him she'd had more wine than food at whatever event she'd come from. I think this is my Uber, she said, then blinked at his front porch light. No, this is a house. It is, Marcus said carefully. My house. She looked at him. He looked at her. Then she slowly slid down about 3 inches against the doorframe, and Marcus moved fast, catching her elbow before she hit the porch. Whoa, I got you. I'm fine, she said, with the absolute confidence of someone who was not fine. He could have closed the door. He could have called 911 and gone back to his bills. He was a 34-year-old black man in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, and he was very aware that man opens door for intoxicated woman at 3 a.m. was not a story that ended well for everyone involved. But Marcus Webb had been raised by a grandmother who said you help people when they need it, and you don't ask what they can do for you first. And this woman, whoever she was, needed help. Come on, he said. Let's get you inside. Just for a minute. He sat her at the kitchen table, the same table where his bills were stacked, and put a glass of water in front of her. She drank half of it without being asked, then pressed her palms flat on the table like she was steadying a ship. My phone, she said. I had my phone. Check your purse. She fumbled with the clasp. Inside was a sleek phone with a cracked screen, a company credit card, and a key card that read Hargrove and Lane Enterprises. Marcus had seen that name. It was on the glass building downtown, the one with the fountain out front. She found her phone and stared at it. My driver left. I told him I was fine and I got out. She paused. I was not fine. No, Marcus agreed. My name is Claire. She looked up at him. Her eyes were starting to clear, embarrassment replacing the fog. Claire Hargrove. Marcus nodded slowly. I'm Marcus. Marcus. She said it like she was writing it somewhere in her memory. I'm so sorry, I don't do this. I had a dinner. Investors. They kept refilling the glass and I kept saying yes because saying no felt like showing weakness and... She stopped herself. Took a breath. I'm telling a stranger my business problems at 3 in the morning. You're also in his kitchen, Marcus said. So we're past normal. Something almost like a smile crossed her face. He called her a car service, a real one, and waited with her on the porch until the headlights came up the street. He didn't ask for anything, didn't take a photo, didn't make her feel small. When the car pulled up, he walked her to the door, made sure she was seated, and told the driver the address she gave him. Before the door closed, Claire looked back at him. You're a good man, Marcus, she said quietly. He shrugged. Get home safe. He watched the car pull away, then went back inside and looked at his bills. They were still there. They didn't care about good deeds. Sat in a waiting room on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown. He was wearing the only blazer he owned, and he'd polished his shoes the night before while Lily watched cartoons and told him he looked like a fancy daddy. He'd applied for a facilities and operations manager position at Hargrove and Lane Enterprises. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. benefits, a salary, something solid. His current job at the construction site had been cutting hours. He needed something real, something for Lily. The receptionist called his name and led him down a carpeted hallway. He'd expected an HR rep, maybe a mid-level manager. He was not expecting the door to open into an office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the entire Columbus skyline. And Claire Hargrove standing behind a glass desk, looking at his resume. She looked up. He felt the floor tilt slightly. Her expression moved through surprise, recognition, and then something warm and careful, all in the span of about 2 seconds. "Marcus Webb," she said. "Miss Hargrove." He stood very straight. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Please sit." He sat. She studied him. Not the way he'd feared he might be studied, but with something that looked like respect. "You didn't tell me you were going to apply here," she said. "I didn't know your last name matched the building until after I submitted," he said honestly. She almost smiled. "Fair." She set the resume down. 12 years in facilities and operations, military background, single father. She looked at him. "Your references call you the most dependable person they've ever worked with." "I try to be." "Why do you want this position?" Marcus thought about the bills on the kitchen table. He thought about Lily's tuition for the fall. He thought about the way she'd asked him last week if they were going to have to move again, and how he'd told her no with more confidence than he felt. "I have a daughter," he said. "She's 6. She's the reason I do everything. I want to give her stable. I want her to grow up knowing that her dad built something real for her. Not just survived, but actually built something." He paused. "This position is a foundation. I don't take foundations lightly." Claire was quiet for a moment. "The night you helped me," she said carefully, "I was a mess. I was embarrassed and exhausted, and I'd had too much to drink trying to impress people I don't even like." She folded her hands on the desk. "You could have ignored me. You could have handled it in 100 different ways that would have made sense for you to choose. But you just helped. No agenda. No moment of hesitation. My grandma would have come back and haunted me if I'd left you on that porch," Marcus said. She laughed. A real one, not a polished boardroom laugh. It changed her whole face. "I want to offer you the position," she said, "but I need you to understand. I'm not doing this because of what happened. I'm doing this because your background is exactly what we need, and your references are exceptional. The other thing just told me what kind of person I was already looking at on paper." Marcus nodded. "I understand, and I wouldn't have it any other way." He started the following Monday. By the end of the first month, the operations team, which had been running 3 months behind on maintenance cycles, was back on schedule. By the end of the second month, Marcus had identified a vendor contract that was costing the company $30,000 more than necessary and renegotiated it quietly, without being asked. Claire noticed. She noticed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon when Lily had a school half-day and Marcus's sitter canceled last minute. He'd already used his personal days. He had no options. He showed up to work with a 6-year-old in a yellow raincoat carrying Peanut the stuffed elephant, head down, fully prepared to be reprimanded. Instead, Claire looked up from her desk as they passed her open office door, saw the small human in the yellow coat and said, "Is that your daughter?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, my sitter." "She can sit with Diane at reception," Claire said, already standing. "Diane has a tablet, and I know for a fact there are animal videos downloaded on it." She came around her desk and crouched down to Lily's level. "Hi. I'm Claire. I work with your dad." Lily studied her with the total unfiltered judgment of a 6-year-old. Then she held up Peanut. "This is my elephant." "He is beautiful," Claire said, completely serious. Lily decided she approved. By the time spring came, Marcus had been promoted to director of operations. He stood in Claire's office, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows, and tried to find the right words. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "Marcus." Claire looked at him with an expression that was tired of arguing about things that were true. "You saved this department. You saved me money I didn't know I was losing. You show up every single day like the building will fall down if you don't." She tilted her head. "Who taught you to work like that?" He thought for a moment. "My grandmother, and a little girl in a yellow raincoat who's watching." Claire smiled. "Then thank them both." He looked out the window at the city stretched below, Columbus, Ohio, his city, and thought about the kitchen table, the bills, the cold coffee, the knock at the door he almost didn't answer. He thought about what it meant to open a door when you didn't have to help when there was nothing in it for you, to trust that doing the right thing was enough, even when the bills said otherwise, even when the world wasn't watching. Turned out the world was always watching. You just had to be the kind of person worth watching. That night he picked Lily up from school, took her for ice cream, and when she asked why he was smiling so much, he said, "Because a long time ago Grandma told me something and today I finally got to see if it was true." "Was it?" Lily asked, chocolate already on her chin. "Ma,